Hello, I'm Super Orange Cat here today to talk about Toonami's ratings from this past week, April 1st, 2023. Let's start at the top of the block. At the top of the block, we have My Hero Academia at a 0.12, followed by an episode at a 0.10. Then we have Food Wars at a 0.09, One Piece at a 0.07, and Naruto at a 0.06. Overall, this is a pretty samey week, as in the ratings were more or less the same as they were the previous week. My Hero Academia's first episode was a little bit higher, and the back of the block with One Piece and Naruto were a tiny bit lower. But outside of that, it wasn't like a big notable change in either direction, which makes talking about this week kind of boring. I want to talk about something that actually got released today. Warner Bros. Discovery released a statement talking about, our year in recap, where they're gushing about Adult Swim and actually specifically did mention Toonami, where they mentioned that the ratings year over year actually went up 11% for Toonami for premieres. I'll go into that in a second. And specifically noting the success of My Hero Academia on the block. Now, this is exactly what I've been saying for the past few months at this point. If you've been following my channel talking about Toonami, you'll know that I've been heaping praise on My Hero Academia in terms of keeping ratings up. And you see that here. It's probably the only thing you could probably throw on Toonami at any point and get a 0.10 higher anymore. Maybe Uzumaki does. Maybe Fooly Cooly has enough clout that grunge or shoegaze get there. But really, outside of that, I think there's not much you can do. And people are like, well, that means Toonami had an amazing year. Well, here's where the legalese and nice corporate talk goes into play. Now, notice, they mentioned My Hero Academia. That's a show, of course, they had to pay money to pick up the license to air. Notice how there were two, probably more, top of my head, I can only think of two original series that aired in the last 12 months. Well, one in the last 12 months, one the last going into the start of the last year. That one being Shenmue, and the other one being Housing Complex C. Isn't it weird that the two shows that Toonami, or Adult Swim, William Street, whatever, paid the most money for because they had to play their own role in production, weren't even mentioned? The ones that definitely probably were ultimately net losses for Toonami, they weren't mentioned. But My Hero Academia was. And again, if you've been following Warner Bros. Discovery, one of the very first things they did when they first took over Warner Media was to cut the living hell out of anything Turner related. That included Toonami. As you remember, you had Fena Pirate Princess, you had Shenmue, and you had Blade Runner Black Lotus all written off for tax purposes, which meant that any future plans of them even airing on the block were gone. And again, that showed at the very least they didn't like Shenmue or didn't see Shenmue as important to their future plans. And Housing Complex C, I wouldn't be too surprised if they meet the same fate eventually. That's something to stay tuned for. Although it did okay in ratings. I think My Hero Academia is actually getting better ratings now than Housing Complex C did like 6 months ago. But again, I digress. And another thing is, when they mentioned, it went up 11%. Well, and they mentioned, and premieres. Well, see, that's a qualifier there. What did they count as premieres? Did they take last year and count for the previous year, count everything that was technically first air on television as premiere, but then for the last 12 months, suddenly the lower rated shows that you can argue aren't new were suddenly not counted. So, for example, I'm saying what was plausible, since we don't know the actual math here because they're not showing us their math, is did it say in 2021 Naruto counted as a premiere late at night when not as many people were watching? But in 2022, Naruto, which still was rating lower than, of course, something like My Hero Academia, was that magically now suddenly, well, no, technically people have seen this streaming for a while, so it's technically not new. And it's very unfair, and they're trying to frame what they're trying to push into an apples to oranges comparison into apples to apples and framing that way. That's just normal corporate speak. And again, I've noticed I used to, like a few years back, I was actually having full on Excel files like covering ratings. I should probably go back to that. But a year or so ago, I can assure you the ratings were a bit higher than they were now. So I kind of call BS that the ratings went up 11%. But definitely they were correct to point out My Hero Academia being a big reason why premieres are still holding up. Because even if you leave at the start of the block, My Hero Academia, that first episode, 0.12. A couple of hours later by Naruto, you lost half the target audience, you had a 0.06. So it's My Hero Academia. And I'm not even sure you can throw Naruto at the top of the block and get 0.1. I'm not sure One Piece can get a 0.11 at the very top of the block. Hell, Food Wars might. It got very close the last 2 weeks. And again, that raises the question, what's replacing My Hero Academia? Well, one good thing is that Adult Swim, no, I said Adult Swim, not Toonami, just happened to get a new show that was supposed to be a Cartoon Network show, and very much has a Toonami vibe. That I'm referring to is Unicorn Warriors Eternal, which is another Gendy Tartakovsky show. If that name sounds familiar, well, there's a lot of reasons for that name to sound familiar, but in very recent history, it is because he created Primal, a show that was an Adult Swim original, but got heavily associated with Toonami because for a while it led off Toonami. What I am saying is, do not be surprised if the show replacing My Hero Academia is a rerun of Unicorns Warriors Eternal. That's my official prediction right now. And maybe they throw a cheap license later in the block. You know what? I'm going to keep saying Tiger and Bunny until it eventually happens, or the Heat Death in Universe happens, or the Second Coming of Christ happens, or something, you know. But I'm going to keep saying that, and I'm going to keep being wrong. But again, I've definitely gone way off base. I started talking about Toonami's ratings, and I kind of went back to Toonami's ratings, but not really. But again, this week, more or less similar numbers to last week. My Hero Academia a little higher, One Piece and Naruto a little bit lower. Roughly the same ratings that Royal Crackers, which Adult Swim has promoted the living heck out of, got. Royal Crackers, which aired on Sunday at 11 p.m., debuted to a 0.12. That's for an episode that was already available online. And then the third episode, an hour later, pulled in a 0.07. So it lost half its ratings over the course of 2 episodes. And it's a show I thought was okay. It's like a weaker version of something. It reminded me a lot of China, Illinois, if you remember that show by Brad Neely, I think was his name, back in the day. Love that show, but Royal Crackers is very same. It's okay. It's not a bad show. It's just a very, very okay show. So again, I've been droning on for a bit too long. So what do you guys think? Leave your comments, leave your opinions down below. I'm the Super Orange Cat, and that is all.